Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome, it's episode number 140 of the Resilient Retail Game Plan, and I'm your host, Catherine Erdley, small business and retail expert. I'm also the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my membership group for product businesses. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, I'm going to bet that you would enjoy being a member. So why not head over to resilientretailclub.com to see everything that we have to offer. No minimum sign up required. Come along, check it out. And if you use the code 10podcast, that's 10podcast, you can get £10 off your first month. Today, we are continuing our mini-series of how to build your business on a budget. And I'm joined today by the fabulous Steph Douglas, who is the founder of Don't Buy Her Flowers, a thoughtful gifting company. Steph, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. Do you want to start off by introducing yourself and your business?
Yes, I'm Steph Douglas. I founded Don't Buy Her Flowers in 2014, and we sell thoughtful gifts which the customer can put together something completely bespoke if they want to, or they can use one of our ready-made packages. But actually 70% of people want to create something completely bespoke, which is ace, because that means they're really putting thought into it. And that's our kind of core value, is around thoughtfulness. So we started as Gift for New Mums because I had my first baby in 2010 and was sent 8 bunches of flowers, which were really well meant, and all the intention was there. But I just realised that, or I thought that it's not a very thoughtful gift because you have to do something with it, and it requires some work from someone who is probably feeling exhausted, emotional, sore, all the stuff that's going on for a new mum. And that was kind of the core of the idea. But it's evolved now, and we do quite quickly, actually, our customers are kind of saying, oh, I want to send a gift for someone who's had an accident, or someone who's unwell, or a birthday, or all these other occasions. So the market was suddenly considerably bigger. But I suppose my job is to maintain that thoughtfulness and make sure that that's what makes us different to just gifts in a box. So yeah, I think that's a roundabout summary. But the core is the products that people put together. We've got kind of 250 British products, and they are all supposed to offer some sort of TLC or encourage someone to sit down with a good book or have a gin and tonic, and people put together kind of products from different categories. So it's rather than a beauty hamper or a food and drink hamper, most of our customers will go across the different categories. So it will be a drink with some bubble bath with a book and a candle, and you can kind of picture it as that. The gift is like about saying, here you go and have that bath and take your time. And that's kind of it.
I love it. And so when you say the kind of thoughtfulness is the umbrella that holds it all together, so that's how it manifests, so that all of the products are, I was going to say indulgence, but that sounds a bit, well, yeah,
well, it could
nice
be,
treats.
yeah, it could be indulgent, but it could be like as simple as a thermos mug, because you know that a new parent never gets a hot cup of tea.
Yes.
Or it could be, it really varies. Or they're unwell and they need to relax, so you've got CBD oil, or like there's just a real mix. But I think the thoughtfulness is the person who's buying it puts it together as to what they know that person wants. Is it dark chocolate? Is it milk chocolate? Is it gin and tonic? Or is it a cleansing tea? Or there's so many options. But if you know the person that you're buying for, obviously that's kind of the point.
So the theme of this sort of mini series of podcast episodes, if you like, is all about promoting your business on the budget. So you started back in 2014. Can you tell me a little bit about how you first started getting the word out there when you first started?
Yeah, well, I had no budget. And in fact, I was looking back at the numbers and I had no budget for a good few years. And I came from a background of brand and marketing, working in government and on London 2012, where we had multi-million pound budgets. So my first thing was like, oh, I need to find an agency to help with this. And Doug, my husband, who works in finance, was just like, no, you don't. There's no budget. So before I started the business, we launched in November 2014. But in the January, I gave myself the kind of, I think it was actually a New Year's resolution, but I was like, I need to start a blog, because I felt like at that point, so this was 2014, there were more and more people who were, but blogging was big then, and you could see that kind of growing, and it was a way to reach people that didn't cost any money. I love writing, I still love writing, so it had that element to it, and it was something that I could do that would kind of be a stepping stone. And also I'd have to build a website, even if it was a basic one like WordPress. I'd need to promote it and build that network of people that would actually read it beyond my family and my friends. And so the blog was kind of, it sounds really strategic now when I describe it, but maybe like my background, like I say, is brand and marketing. So I suppose my head does work in that way, but I wasn't really thinking, right, if I build it to X number of followers and I post X number of times, then it will lead to that many customers when I start the business. But it was more as well, I think my confidence was probably, I'd had two babies quite close together. My confidence of who am I, what do I do, what do I want to do as a job or any of that was probably quite low. And so writing and connecting with people, that human connection for me was the crux of it, which again still lives through the business, because what we're actually seeing every day when people send a package and you see that we have a handwritten note that goes with each one with whatever their message is, and you see these exchanges that are going on, and that connection is kind of, again, it fits core with the thoughtfulness. And I think that's kind of where it started. So the blog allowed me to talk to and probably work out who my customer was, because it was women who were like me, maybe who at that age and probably stage of life where they were having babies or their friends were having babies. And at that point, as we were gifts for new mums, that made sense. And I think when I was writing quite honestly about motherhood and relationships, and that I'd found it hard. And the response was overwhelming, and people were kind of sharing posts. I had a couple that went viral. And so you're kind of going, oh, there's something in this. And if people are reading my thoughts on these things and they are agreeing with it and they're saying, oh, I feel heard, like I feel this is how I feel, then it makes sense that if they're given flowers when they have a baby, they're thinking, I just need looking after. I need someone to tell me it's going to be okay. I need a magazine to help me, to encourage me to have a sit down and a bit of chocolate.
Something to feel like myself, my old self, as it were.
That's for me. That's not that's just for me. And also it really acknowledge. I think, again, I underestimated all of this, but if you're having a rubbish time or a difficult time, or you're feeling not quite yourself, and someone gives you something that says, here, I see you. I see that you actually really need a little bit of something, a bit of TLC. It goes much further. It's not just a box of stuff. It's not just a gift. It kind of is like, oh, that person has recognized that. And when we just launched, we would get people coming to us going, oh my God, she cried when she opened it. And it's like, this is just like a magazine and some chocolate potentially, but it's that somebody has recognized how I might be feeling.
Yeah.
And they put it in some words on a tag, and and they've chosen these things for me. And I think that's the kind of power in it. But again, that's what translated from the blog,
from the connection. I think what really struck me, because my kids, like yours must be older. Was it your first or your second you had in 2010?
The first. So I've got 5, 10 and 12. So I went again with the third one. There was quite a gap. There was a gap, and then we went all over again.
So mine are 15 and nearly 13.
Right.
And I remember that, you kind of get through those young years, and it was, I mean, I had my children not young by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe younger for my friendship group.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a friend of mine who's probably the most capable, organized, maybe slightly terrifying person you'd ever meet, like terrifyingly efficient, I should say. She had her children quite a few years after me. And I remember seeing her after her first was born, and just, how, I don't know if devastated is the right word, but, you're just so sort of broken down. Do you know what I mean? Like this is your life before you have children, and then you have children, and you're just so, it's almost like you're so submerged by the experience.
It's all encompassing.
Yeah, for sure. And then it takes until they're probably 5, 7 plus, older than that, for you to just almost kind of go, oh, actually, I can sit down and have a hot cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, like we went out it was Mother's Day yesterday, so we went out for dinner at the pub, and I was stressing that it was too late. I mean, dinner was at 6. It's not late by any stretch, but I was like, but they'll be Frank will be hungry, the youngest one, that'll be a nightmare. I was like, but actually it was fine. And we took for him, and the big ones chatted with us. And Doug and I we're still not over the last few years and how awful a meal could be. Like when you've got your heart set on having a nice meal that you're not cooking and you're not cleaning up, and then everyone spills stuff, everyone starts crying,
the
and
wheels
it's like,
come off the bus. We always used to be like, God. The wheels are coming off the bus.
Get out. It's that,
or you'd like grab the waiter, we're ready to order now.
Yes, please, really quickly. But I think it is, and I think there's a lot more conversation about it now for mothers and women, but I don't think anything prepares you for it, because even if once you're in it, it's reassuring to hear other people talking about it, and you might go, oh, it's not just me. But before you get there, you're not engaged in that, because you're like, well, and also we probably all secretly think that we'll be okay, and we'll be, because we're very capable. Do you know? So you're like, well, I won't do it like that, and I'll be fine. And then it hits you like a brick in the face, which is, and at the same time, you're also thinking most of the time, this is the most amazing thing. This thing I gave, but it's a living thing that is amazing. And so you've got, just so many conflicting emotions. But I think, especially when I started writing that, people weren't talking about it. And if you think about it as well, and I've thought about this more recently, the gift of flowers is like now most women buy them for themselves if they really love flowers. And it's actually quite old school that I'm not saying it's not a lovely gesture on certain occasions, but I think that idea that you've had a baby and you get bought flowers is actually just really old fashioned, because like, well, what else could you possibly want? Because everything's so great. It's not very honest with how actually that experience is.
So bringing it back to the business then, rather than, it's sort of such a fascinating topic, but what I love about this then is that it's this, and I have to say, actually, I'm beginning to see a real theme with the people that I'm speaking to about growing organically. It is that connection. It's the fact that you were writing a blog and you were speaking directly to other people who had a shared experience. And I really do believe that there's this fundamental human need to talk to other people going through the same thing. And that could be whether that's a brand new baby, that could be a brand new business, it could be your first day of university, it could be, as I've recently discovered, when you get a puppy, like you have this need to talk to other people who want to have a discussion with you about the minutiae of feeding schedules and everything else. So you had that real connection. So you really only had the blog for a few months when you launched Don't Buy Her Flowers.
So I started it in the February, and I pressed go on the website in the November. And I wanted to do it sooner, but I had a 2 and a 3-year-old when we launched. And so it was like someone would get sick and they wouldn't be able to go to nursery, and it was just kind of dragged on. But so it was about, 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah. And was it a pretty much instant, almost like reaction when people were going, yes, this is what I want?
Yeah, so the website crashed. So again, because I'd built this community and I had all these people that got it, they immediately were sharing it and saying, this is brilliant. And again, I think probably now maybe there's a lot more options on gifting, but especially back then, and because people didn't really talk about the fact that becoming a mum was quite hard.
Yeah.
All these women were like, oh my God, I had loads of flowers and I hated them and I didn't know what to do with them, and I didn't have enough vases and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so they were advocates, like huge advocates, and the website crashed because we weren't expecting lots of traffic. We didn't have a big server. So that was amazing. And our audience and our customers have all continued to be massive advocates, which again, I think if you've built a brand where you stand for something more than is just a product or a service, and you've made that connection, they want you to succeed. They want to be part of that story. And we've got people who have been there since 2014.
And they're still buying their gifts.
Yeah.
This is the thing I do think that there's a big opportunity for repeat purchasing with gifting, isn't there? Because if you find a website that has got products that you like and a good experience, then why not just use it for whatever gift you need, really?
So 40% of our customers are repeat, or 40% of our orders are repeat customers, which is great.
That's fantastic.
That's the stat you need, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about, so obviously then organic growth, a huge part of that came from that community, that connection, which has been so important. You also talked about, sort of when we were chatting before the podcast or emailing before the podcast, you're talking about using influencers, or when specific people had shared about receiving a box from you, and that had a big impact. And was that organic, or was that something that you almost went out there and strategically looked for the people that you wanted to build those relationships with?
It was quite organic. I think I was kind of blogging at a time, so I'd connected with a load of other bloggers, and there was a lot going on at the time with like Mumsnet and Blogfest and all these events and people writing, and we really connected. It was kind of this weird unknown world where we're like, and also just the start of like maybe getting a trip to a something to write about. I mean, I didn't do that kind of blogging, but some of them did, and so you would do kind of connecting with people in real life, and everybody was everybody's very supportive of each other. There's always an undercurrent. I think it's the same in like the podcasting world of people going, oh, but she's getting more than I'm getting, and that kind of thing, or how are they successful? But I met some really lovely people, really great people who a lot of them have gone on to do, like be authors and write brilliantly. And you've got like Harafa Jin, Katie Kirby, and
I love
Sarah.
Harafa Jin.
She's great, and Sarah Turner, the Unmumsy Mum, and they're friends of mine. And we were kind of at the same time, all kind of juggling along, but they were supportive. And I think Sarah was the one that I think it was only in my year 1 or something. I we'd sort of started to connect a bit on Twitter and things. And you know who people are in your kind of sector, don't you?
Yeah.
And so I said to her, oh, do you have anyone that you'd like to send a gift to? Because I think the key thing for me that I recognize and I think is really important, people don't necessarily want to see other people getting free stuff, especially if it's someone who is an influencer who gets free stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't really tell anyone anything about our brand, because it's about thoughtfulness. So I know we've had suggestions from various sort of agencies or people we've worked with in the past, like, oh, you should be gifting these people and these people. It's like, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't translate, because it's just a box of products. It's not for a reason. It's not to say, it's not really personal, which is the whole point. And so I didn't offer Sarah a free gift, but I asked if she had anyone that she would want to send a package to. And she was like, oh, my best mate lives miles away and she's about to have her first baby. And I was like, okay, when she does, I'd love to send her a package and you don't have to do anything, which again, I think is really critical, because a lot of small businesses are really hurt when somebody doesn't want to share their stuff.
Right.
And I think it's important. It's great if you can negotiate that and have those conversations. But if you're looking to do it for free and not pay anyone, I think you have to accept that some people will and some people won't.
Yeah.
And that comes again about building that relationship with somebody first. So Sarah and I had a relationship. And so I said, yeah. So, and then when her friend had the baby and she got a text from her friend saying, oh my God, it made me cry. This is amazing. She posted that on her Facebook and it totally went off, because her audience was exactly the audience that I wanted to talk to. And I happened to be in Wales on a family holiday with my small kids, and it was a total nightmare, but it was amazing at the same time. So it's that thrill of like, there's orders coming, shit, I'm not there to pack them. But I think that's what I would say about working with influencers. It's like, don't just go for a load of people with big accounts, because I think that's the kind of mistake people make. It's like, find someone that is either a customer of yours already, or they have a reason to be a customer of yours, and can you start connecting with them maybe on Instagram first and showing an interest in the stuff that they're doing? Because sometimes you'll get somebody who isn't following you and then they'll say, oh, can I send you this free? And then they start following you. Like, there's no connection there.
Yeah.
You're just looking for someone to flog your goods for you.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't respond to that very well.
And I think that's so interesting what you're saying as well, because this is a conversation that I have quite often with people about influencers. And, I do not profess to be any kind of expert in the influencer world, but it's sometimes just simpler than it sounds. It's about people who are effectively your ideal customer, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because if they're your ideal customer, the chances are the people who follow them will be your ideal customer, and you could get more mileage out of somebody with a small but engaged audience than a massive account that just doesn't have any synergy whatsoever with your
and there'll be more authentic customers as well, right? Because I think if it's somebody who just has a massive following, they might get a hit of sales, but those people might just be buying it because that person has said so and they really admire them or whatever. But that doesn't mean they necessarily connect with your brand. And actually you want them to become customers rather than a sale, don't you? So
yeah, for
it's
sure.
kind of having the right people. I think hopefully people are realizing that more, that someone could have 5,000 followers and they might, if they're exactly who your customer is, that could be amazing opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So effectively, it wasn't a question. It almost wasn't like you were out there looking for influencers. You were just kind of saying, right, who do I have a relationship with? And that all grew organically as well. And then you were able to, you're just kind of keeping an eye out for the opportunities, as opposed to literally going down a list and just saying, will you, can I send you my product? Can I send you my product?
And also that's another thing. I think if your followers or people happen to see you hit across loads of influencers who all have received your thing at the same time, again, I mean, if it works because it's a certain time of year or it's a launch or something like that, that's different. But it doesn't convey so much about the brand. I think handpicking and then nurturing those relationships a bit and then working out. Because also, I suppose what I would look for, in the same way that Sarah had a friend who had a baby, it would be like, okay, has someone started a new job? Have they had a really awful time? Are they struggling with something? Have they said that they're struggling with it? Like, to make sure that it still makes sense as of what our product is.
Yes. There's not just, as you say, a box of stuff. It still very much fits under the umbrella of the thoughtful gifting.
Yeah.
Talking about then another organic tactic, possibly one of the reasons I followed you for so long, is that I feel like you are very good at PR. I quite often see you pop up and you're quite often quoted. And I don't know, I see you as a business owner who has a really great established public profile, and you talk about the business and how you've grown it, and you're visible as the owner. So how important do you think PR has been for the growth of the business?
Yeah, really important. I think the biggest thing it's important for us is to create a brand and a story which helps the growth of the business. So I suppose that if you look at all the different elements, so whether that's SEO or partnerships or paid ads or whatever it is, it's like each should have a role. And I think for PR, it's brand building, because it's going to be longer form copy, so it gives you opportunity to put messaging in there that you can't put in an ad. And you can't really keep hammering on about on your own social media.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just more credible, I suppose, if it's written somewhere else. So yeah, I think for PR, I think it's looking at different angles all the time that will tell your story. And so I suppose for that one, people just need to really work out what their story is. And it won't be for everybody. And it might be that at certain times of the year, your story has, is more valid than others. But I think having that real clear story behind you and coming down to your brand pillars, like for us, I suppose it's motherhood, thoughtfulness. Like we would have a selection of maybe 4 brand pillars, and making sure, right, what stories do I have around those 4 that will help tell the story of Don't Buy Her Flowers?
Because presumably you must do PR as in product PR, so where you're pitching the boxes and everything sort of to gift guides, that kind of thing. But then equally, you've got almost your own, like you say, the brand owner PR, the personal PR, if you like.
You're spot on, because I think, and what we have found actually is, generally speaking, and I'm sure there's PR people out there who are brilliant at both, but they're either good at one or the other. So they're either good at the kind of product placement or the kind of more messaging and background story. And ideally we'd be doing both. At the moment, we're focused more on kind of the messaging and story, because the product doesn't have as bigger value, I don't think, to the business as actually the kind of messaging and why should people send a thoughtful gift, what's in that. But yeah, ideally you would do both.
And I suppose now would be a great time to plug Lightbulb PR, which is
yeah, definitely. That's been really interesting.
We're both in Lightbulb. So for anyone listening, it's a Facebook group. It's only entrepreneurs and journalists, which is fantastic. And you have lots of opportunities. Have you found opportunities that have come out of that as well?
Yeah, there was a few last week with the budget announcement, and people were looking for small businesses. And so I think we ended up with 4 or 5 pieces. And some of that was through, a couple were from Lightbulb and some were from our PR person. But yeah, it's a great tool if you're a small business It's, I mean, it's quite you've got to keep looking at it, and then sometimes you look at it and go, damn it, I missed it, because there's journalists basically putting a call out saying, oh, I'm looking for, and it could be someone that sells plants, and you can obviously jump on it. But yeah, it's great opportunity. And I think that the thing with PR is it could be anywhere. Like it's looking for different. It's not necessarily that a PR, like we didn't pay anyone to do the PR for a good few years. And I used to feel really intimidated by journalists. I probably still do a bit. Be gentle with me. But it's like, I think because you know that they've got that power to say yes or no, like I like your product, I don't like your product. And what's been really lovely for me is as the business has grown, now if I contact a journalist, quite often they've heard of us or they've had a package and they go, oh my God, someone sent me that. So then you're pushing on a slightly open door rather than going in cold. Whereas at the beginning, it was so nerve-wracking having to contact people going, I've started this business but I think you have to just then, and you have to do it. You have to flog yourself. And that is part of being a business owner.
And I love what you said about you didn't pay anything for PR for lots of years, because I think, light bulbs super low cost. I think it's $5.99 a month or something.
Yeah.
And to be honest, for me personally, so I think I'd be curious to know if you find this, because Fiona Minute, who runs Boss Your PR, who's a fabulous small business PR expert, she talks about like that PR mindset. And it's almost like once you have it, you start seeing opportunities, or you just start seeing like, oh, I could talk to that person. It's almost like once you start doing it, it can snowball. So some of my best collaborations have come from, I just get an email, newsletter from somebody, and I think, oh, they're doing a webinar. Well, I could offer them a webinar, and I'll just click reply. And it's almost like the more you just take, you let go of the outcome, and you just think, right, I'm just going to, where can I get my story out there? And I love the fact that you focus on your story as a business and what you stand for, because I think that's what a lot of product businesses don't realize, that they've got this gold mine with PR, that they think, oh, it's about, which, gift guides for sure are really, I think they can be really important. They can be really transformative, especially when you're first starting out and you're trying to get your name out there and that credibility and this kind of thing. But absolutely, your story as a business owner is so important, and then it's also establishing you as an expert as well, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't know in a gift guide, you don't know where you're going to be. It could be they do a gift guide, it's 50 gifts for someone in your number 49, and I think, and also ultimately it all helps with backlinks, doesn't it? So it's all good for SEO, so the more bits you get. But I think you're right that it's starting to keep your eye out on, so for example, I don't know, it could be that you follow people who are writing about motherhood out for me, and then you notice that they might have something that they're talking about new mums, and they're writing about how tough it is, and then you can kind of go, they would get it, they would get Don't Buy Her Flowers, so therefore I could contact them and see if they would like to do anything. And I think it's a job in itself in a way, but for sure, you're probably, as the owner or the founder, you're probably the best person to do it, especially if you don't have the budget.
Because you just, like you say, sending emails. And
do you think as well that journalists would rather hear from business owners than a PR person?
Yes, personally. I don't really consider myself a journalist. Obviously, I write for Forbes, but I mean, it's very much as a side to what I do running the business, but I get pitched a lot. It makes a massive difference to me. If I get, I must get, I don't even know how many I get a day. I just have a special folder in my emails, if I'm totally honest, but I do file them, and sometimes I will go back through and see, oh, I thought I had something from that person. But there's such a massive difference between a PR company saying, hey, just getting in touch about blah, 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 blah. And sometimes they're just so unrelated to what I would ever write about. I think, do you even know, it's so clear, like you say, that blanket approach.
Yeah, I get people messaging going, oh, we saw that you love flowers. You're like, oh dear. And actually, I don't hate flowers. I should put that up there. But yeah, like you haven't looked at the business. But I think as well, like, I'll get quite a lot of people pitching their client to come on my podcast. And actually, if I heard directly from the person and it was a warm email where they had connected us in some way, I would be way more likely to reply, because you kind of go, oh, they're sending this out to anyone who's got a podcast, because if you can tell by the format, can't you?
Yes, 100%. For sure. And the difference between that, you're absolutely right. I've had people either, like you say, either a warm approach, like I already know them, maybe they're a client, a club member, somebody who follows me on Instagram, and they say like, I'd love to come on your podcast. This is what I think it would be useful, X, Y, Z. And I'm much, much more likely to respond to that than the blanket.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness. And also some of them, if you almost like if you work with them on one thing, then they'll just like continually keep going and just pitch you like everybody that they work with. So I think you're right. As the business owner, you are the best person. Unfortunately, just from a timing perspective, it's tough. But But again, if you're looking at organically growing, then I think doing your own, just literally standing up and saying, I think this is the thing. Sometimes with people, they just kind of go, well, what am I the expert on? Well, actually, if you spend your days making organic children's clothes, then you're an expert in organic children's clothes. It's like, and kids wear, and you've probably got thoughts about gender neutral dressing, and you've probably got thoughts about the impact on the environment of clothing. And, there's so many things that you can talk about that I often find that product business owners, because in a way, slightly different to service business owners, where you almost are a subject matter expert, product business owners sort of tend to think, well, what have I got to add? But there's usually a huge amount, which I feel like you demonstrate perfectly.
Thank you.
So just to finish this up then, thank you so much for sharing. It's been really interesting to hear all the different ways that, I know there's probably so much more behind what, more and over and above what we touched on. But if somebody's listening to the podcast today and they're thinking, I really, I wish I could do more to grow my sales organically, what would be some of your top tips or your top tip for organic sales growth?
I think doing it yourself as much as you can, and it depends on what stage you are at the business. But if you're needing your sales to grow and you're quite early into it, I would say working out what your story is and trying to communicate that as kind of concisely as you can, and try to build those relationships, and whether that's with people on Instagram and on social media or journalists. But there's ways of doing it, and nice. But even if you start with like a really local newspaper, and you can, that it all counts. I think that was I flogged myself in those first few years. But any coverage, it was a bonus, because you're reaching people and you don't know what that might lead to. So I think don't sort of sit and go, oh, but I need to get in the Times gift guide, Christmas gift guide. Like, brilliant, like have that as one of your targets. But there's so many platforms and journalists and Instagram people and all these things that you could reach. I think you've got to kind of maybe it's creating a list of key ones that you want to reach, and then not kind of blurting it all in one go, but just thinking, right, if I can get to a couple of those a week, if I can get through that, because you've got to be realistic about how much time it takes, as well as running a business. But then you'll feel that progress of like ticking something off and getting somewhere.
Yeah,
that's probably important.
That's so true. I always say that the question you have to ask yourself over and over again, like repeatedly, is who else has a relationship or is already talking to my ideal customer? And those are the people you go talk to, whether that's a community or a blogger or an influencer or a magazine, or who is already talking to them. And then you can talk, if you then talk to that person, then that's building out that network. So what is next for Don't Buy Her Flowers?
Well, we're looking at raising money at the moment, actually, which is that's outside of my comfort zone, I would say, because it's not something I've done before. But just the business is really solid. Like, we've got amazing story in terms of stats and repeat customers and all that stuff. But it's been a tough year, I think, for everybody in retail. I'm sure you've seen that plenty.
Yes, for sure.
So it's kind of hoping that things recover, but not wanting to put all my eggs in one basket. So the opportunity with Don't Buy Her Flowers is so big, I think, because there's so many occasions that people can buy us for. We know that our customer, I spent quite a lot of time talking to customers at the end of last year, and they're really loyal. They love what we do. They tell everyone what we do. And they gave us some feedback that was useful for things we could do better, which is always good to get. And so I think for me, it's kind of, I think we're ready to grow. We were really tested during COVID because we grew so quickly. We were 600% up year on year.
Wow.
By the end of 2020, which was ridiculous, amazing, but also a really weird time to be seeing that kind of success. But it meant that we had to really push everything operationally. So we had to be able to handle considerable volume whilst maintaining the quality. And we reinvested money that we made in that time into building a new website, stock management system. Like, operationally, we really invested. And now it's kind of driving the sales because we can handle it. And reach for me is the big thing, kind of reaching more people, because I haven't had a big marketing budget, because we haven't taken investment. I haven't, it's always been just whatever we've been able to generate.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, what could you do if you put some fuel behind this, basically?
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And B2B, actually, B2B, that whole corporate market where people are disconnected and they don't necessarily go into an office at the moment, or they may never, and they're working remotely and employers are trying to connect with them. And it's like there's loads of opportunity there in gifting, I think.
Fantastic. So let's just wrap this up with, let's know where we can find out more about Don't Buy Her Flowers.
don'tbuyherflowers.com, Steph_don'tbuyherflowers on Instagram, or Don't Buy Her Flowers on all the socials. That's me.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Steph for being such a generous and open guest. I really enjoyed hearing all about your story. Why not head over to @Resilient Retail Club on Instagram, say hello, tell me what your takeaways were from this podcast. In fact, tell me what you think about the mini-series as a whole. And why not post a picture of where you're listening? I always love to see it. Thank you so much. It's always great to see you packing your orders, walking your dogs, or making your products, whatever you're up to when you're listening in. Of course, if you have a moment to rate and review the podcast, it makes an absolute world of difference when it comes to getting the podcast out to more people. You can either rate the podcast within the Spotify app or within iTunes. You can rate and leave a review. I read them all personally. They absolutely make my day when they come in. So please, if you have a moment, why not do so? And of course, if you subscribe or follow the podcast, you'll be the first to know about each week's new episode. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions, or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.